Hello there, Drew Hanish of Whiskey Lore, and time for another whiskey tasting. Today, going to be doing a tasting of a whiskey that I fell in love with while at Glenturret on tour in Scotland. They, interestingly enough, decided to bring out another company's whiskey for the tasting. So the whiskey they introduced me to is Benromach 15. Benromach is a very small Speyside distillery that creates some amazing whiskeys, and if you've not heard of them or you've not seen this bottle on the shelf, well, they recently rebranded, so now their bottles are white and have red letters in blocks on the front of the label. This is a very interesting whiskey because once I came back from Scotland, I was obsessed. I wanted to find this. I thought it was so great. It had a little bit of a hint of peat smoke to it, but just a hint. But it was a sherried whiskey, and it just really, really turned me on. And then when I got back here, I couldn't find it anywhere for the longest time. I ended up having to go and buy it in Kentucky, of all places, up at the Party Source, which is up by the New Riff Distillery, and they had a bottle of it there. The 15 years set me back 105, I think, which at that time was the most money I'd actually ever spent on a bottle of whiskey. So that's how much I wanted this bottle of whiskey. So you can see that I haven't made a huge dent in this bottle, even though I bought it probably a year ago. And the reason is that once I got it home, I was not as impressed with it. I thought, you know, I didn't know whether it was, I'd spent a lot of money on it, and so I thought it was just going to be so amazing in my memory from Scotland, and I was just kind of like, you know what, it's okay. And I ended up opening another bottle of Benromach that I had bought while I was on that same trip that was a non-age stated that I ended up liking more, and that bottle is almost empty at this point. So what happened with this Benromach? Well, I decided today when I was pouring my glass that I was going to nose it and move about the room, because recently I've had some issues with nosing whiskeys in my kitchen. Now what's interesting is that I nose this in my kitchen, but not in the normal place that I usually will do the nosing. I'm usually at the counter when I'm doing my nosing. And this time I decided to move over by the refrigerator. It wasn't planned, that's just where I was at the moment when I poured it, and then I pulled it up to my nose right away. And I was amazed at how fragrant this whiskey was. And it got me thinking, and I decided to move from the spot I was in to another spot, not too far away, and the nose changed. And what happened was it became harder for me to nose it in the second place that I stood. So the first place I was at, I realized I was in a dark area of the kitchen. There wasn't a lot of light coming in, and where I moved to, it was much brighter. And in learning about people who have senses that are sometimes dulled, one sense is dulled, another sense will pick up and become more powerful. So, in other words, people who have sight problems sometimes have better, their hearing adjusts. It's like your body says, wait a second, because this is not working as well, let's amplify some other things. And so it'd be very interesting to know whether that actually happens with whiskey, because I do know from my trip to the Bowls Museum in Amsterdam that different colors shined on your face, and you looking in a mirror can change the flavor of whatever is in your mouth at that particular point. So it stands to reason that as a room gets darker, you will probably have more acute senses in terms of your taste and smell, because you have less visual stimuli going on, and now you have an ability to focus a little bit more on the mouth. So here it is, my 15-year Benromach, and such a fascinating nose on this. And I think one of the things that might cause some issues when doing a nosing of this whiskey initially is that if you are looking for 1 or 2 scents, there's a lot more going on, and it takes a few nosings to start pulling all of the different scents out. It is a really complex whiskey. The way that this is made is that basically it's the same thing as Benromach 10 up to a point. For the first 9 years, they age in ex-sherry casks and in ex-bourbon casks. 80% of the liquid comes from ex-bourbon casks, 20% comes from the sherry casks. Then they're blended together, then they are aged for an additional year, for the 10-year, in Oloroso sherry casks, whereas the 15-year, and the reason why it's so dark, I don't know whether there's colorant in here, it doesn't say anywhere on the label, but it stands to reason that it spends 6 years in an Oloroso sherry cask, and so it's likely getting a lot of that color from that additional 6 years that it spends in that cask. So if you're an Oloroso sherry fan, this is going to be a whiskey that will appeal to you. And if you are, so you're liking those dark fruits, but it also has that little measure of peat, and there's not much peat. They're using like somewhere between 12 and 14 ppm. And so when we think about peated whiskeys like, Lafroig or Ardbeg or those are usually in the 40 to 50 range of ppm. So this is lightly peated. Now, to the person that goes, I hate peated whiskeys, you're probably going to avoid this one, I think. But when I nose this, honestly, any smoke that comes through is really almost binded with a leathery oak smell. And you have to remember that the longer these whiskeys sit in barrels, the more you lose the smoke. So the smoke really just becomes like an accent on this. And so what it does, for me, is it creates this almost, it's just like toasted oak is where it comes out. In fact, if I didn't know this had peat in it, I would probably just say that there was a toasted oak barrel used somewhere in this process, because that's really what you get. What's fascinating is on the nose, I am getting a bubblegum smell, like bazooka bubblegum coming through. There's some toffee, there's plenty of baking spices in this, there's plum coming through, and this is why I say, when you first nose this whiskey, if you try to take it as one unified smell, it may disappoint you in a way, because you can't really define what it is until you really start digging in. And that bubblegum note, it's taking me back to baseball cards. Baseball cards, you buy a pack of them and you get this little stick of gum in there. And when I started collecting cards that were from older packs, they'd just break apart. The gum would just break apart because it dried out so much. But you almost get that kind of a smell in here. It's really, really interesting, mixed with that little leather. And oh man, this has me craving food, is what it does. There's maybe even a little strawberry shortcake in there. It's just a really great nose. Cheers. The plum, berries, little smoke is there. Kind of a ashy, foresty kind of smoke. But if you're not into peated whiskey, you're probably not going to like it. I love it. It's a nice little accent on there. And then on the finish, it goes to some vanilla in there, some pear coming in. It's almost like pear syrup. That strawberry comes back. I get more of that strawberry shortcake just kind of lingering on the palate. And maybe a hint of pepper, but the smoke is pretty much gone at this point. It's like that just kind of faded off in the distance. and you're left with just this really nice, pleasant, dark fruits, strawberries, and maybe a little hint of that vanilla is still left in there. This is a whiskey that, as I said, when I first brought it home, I was a little disappointed in it. I'm like, you know, what's going on? Maybe I was trying to find that 1 scent when I was nosing this before, or maybe it's evolving in the bottle, because I got to tell you, at this point, this has moved from being, okay, you know, this is okay whiskey, this is a good whiskey, to, no, this is one of my favorites now. This is an excellent whiskey, and man, I am going to have to find some kind of a tie between me and Benromach. We could get more bottles of Benromach in my local stores, because I have been impressed with everything that I have tasted from them, and I don't know, man. They may end up giving Glendronach a run for their money, and as a well, Glendronach isn't really. It's actually Highland, because it's not that close to Speyside. So this may actually be my favorite Speyside distillery. Wow, I have to think on that. But I can't think of anybody who I have a more consistent love of their products than Benromach. I hope you enjoyed this. If you enjoyed the video or you learned something from it, give me a like, and I'd love to hear your comments. Have you had Benromach? Is it available in your area? And is there a version of it that you like? Or and what about moving around the room? What do you think about that? Is that something that you've tried? Because I think you'll find that where you're at, the emotions, everything goes into your nosing and tasting. How much awareness you have, how focused you are. If you're stressed out, you're probably going to get a different experience. So until next time, cheers and Slainte. Mm. 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 Mm.